Thank you, Karen. That was incredibly brave of you and important for our symposium to hear. That concludes this panel on anti-Semitism today. I'd like to thank once again our distinguished speakers, Mr. O'Flaherty, Senator Gatula, Chief Rabbi Jacobs, and of course, Ms. Karen Knoll. The next panel is the importance of education in combating anti-Semitism. I would like to invite up from Yad Vashem's International School for Holocaust Studies, Dr. Eyal Kaminka. I would also like to invite up Mr. Jonathan Langer. And I would also like to invite up from the National Council of Iran for Free Elections, Special Envoy Natsila Golestan. And the moderator for this next session is our advisory board member, an MP we're proud to call our friend, Mr. Konstantinos Karagounis, who will be moderating this next panel. So thank you for your attention, and the next panel will get underway straight away.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, honorable speakers of the panel and participants, first of all, I would like to express my special thanks to Rabbi Menachem Margolin for his support and his initiatives to fight against anti-Semitism and intolerance. Let me just shortly introduce myself. My name is Kostas Karagounis. I'm a Greek member of the parliament. I served as president of the Greek Israeli Friendship Committee in the past. And as a former Minister of Justice, I initiated and the Greek Parliament passed the first anti-racism law of Greece that included penalties for Holocaust denial and Nazi salute. I would like to welcome, allow me to welcome three esteemed colleagues from Greece, Minister Adonis Georgiadis, a distinguished member of the Greek government, Minister Olga Kefalogianni, currently the Vice President of the Greek-Israeli Friendship Committee, and the member of the Parliament, Dimitris Markopoulos, also member of the Friendship Committee. It is an honor for me, personally, to be moderating the discussion of such exceptional speakers on a very important topic, such as the importance of education in combating anti-Semitism. You have already introduced the speakers, which is Mr. Eyal Kaminka. I would say that his contribution will be very valuable for the topic we're going to discuss. Mr. Jonathan Langer, formerly known as Lutz Langer, and the former member of a German neo-Nazi group. His story is frankly very interesting. Obviously, he will share with us his views and all the things that radically changed his life. And of course, Mrs. Natsila Golestan, a political activist who has focused all her activities on free and fair elections in Iran. Let me just quickly share with you some brief remarks. Decades after the Holocaust, it was the academic community that took on the burden of preserving its memory, unrevealing the extent of Nazi crimes throughout Europe, and at the same time fighting stereotypes and teaching the younger generations what went on in those dark years of European history. Along with the victims who reluctantly talked about their experiences, the revelations that came with the liberation of the camps, it was later the academic community that dug up information, archives, and photos. It was the academic community that wrote articles, asked questions. How did humanity come to this? What can be done to achieve never again? Violence, discrimination, prejudice are ongoing challenges. Contemporary anti-Semitism many times take on covert forms and masquerades as anti-Israeli propaganda. All these anti-Semites insist to say that they have no problem with the Jews, but they do have problem with Israel. Identifying anti-Semitism and any other form of discrimination within the public sector, government, and the education system is imperative. A human rights approach to education can help create a society that respects, protects, and fulfills human rights for all. In my point of view, we need in each country a specific action plan against anti-Semitism with a particular emphasis on prevention and education. Schools are the most important area for preventing anti-Semitism. In Greece, in the past 2 decades, great steps have been made in combating anti-Semitism, first being the institution of January 27th as a national Holocaust commemoration day in 2004, a productive institutionalized cooperation amongst the Central Board of Jewish communities, the Greek Ministry of Education, the General Secretariat for Religious Affairs, the Jewish Museum of Greece, and Yad Vashem has been taking place. The Jewish Museum of Greece creates programs and carries out their implementations. Training seminars for teachers and educators are offered on an annual basis in various Greek cities and Holocaust education projects for schools. More recently, the Holocaust Museum was founded in Thessaloniki, and most importantly, IHRA's definition of anti-Semitism was adopted by our Prime Minister, Kyriakos Mitsotakis. I just want to know that Greece holds the national presidency of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance for 2021. Let me not take up of your time and begin our very interesting session and give the floor to Mr. Eyal Kaminka.
Several years ago, I took a family vacation to Jamaica, of all places. There was a pizza stand on the beach that offered free pizza for the hotel guests. On the last day of the trip, as I waited for my kids' pizza, I started to chat with the Italian chef that was there. "Where are you from?" he asked me. "Israel," I answered. "Oh, I like Israel. Israel and Italy are friends. And I don't mind Jews, but you need to be careful of them when you work with them. Did you know that all of the Jews are lawyers, rich lawyers, and also that they control Canada?" That's what he told me. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know this guy's story. He was a seasonal worker making pizza for a few months in Jamaica, then a few months in Canada. He was born and raised in Italy, got his education there, and probably during his travels. But apparently the education he received didn't change his stereotypes, didn't convince him that Jews were normal people. It didn't change the way he categorized Jews, nor the anti-Semitic language that he casually used without even understanding how damaging it was. With this story, I want to begin my remarks regarding the role of education in combating anti-Semitism. And sadly, I have some bad news. Not only that not all of the Jews are lawyers, actually most of them are not, and not all the Jews are rich, actually most of them are not, and as far as I know, Canadians of many religious groups control Canada, so not only was that guy wrong, I have some sad news about education systems in the world today. At the International School for Holocaust Studies at Yad Vashem, we work with education systems all over the globe in 6 continents. I'm sad to say that often I see problematic systems that are confused, disoriented, and even worse, irrelevant in many subjects, and especially with regards to Holocaust studies and anti-Semitism. When we talk about the role of education, we need to understand the challenges of education as well as the limits of the discussion. We also need to understand that dealing with anti-Semitism and other forms of bigotry requires a multi-layered approach. Unfortunately, the world doesn't do enough, and this is the saddest news of all. Now, how do I know that the world is not doing enough? Just look around you. While all of us in this room support the notion that anti-Semitism needs to be fought, and many people in Europe and elsewhere in the world are in favor of teaching about the Holocaust and fighting anti-Semitism, all the surveys across the globe point to the fact that anti-Semitism is on the rise, that humanity has a problem with extremism, with xenophobia, with racism, and with hate. I don't need to tell this forum how destructive anti-Semitism is, not only for the Jewish people, but for the world. Anti-Semitism usually spearheads journeys of hatred that lead to wars and the destruction of the fine fabric of democracies. An attack on a synagogue is perpetrated not only by a mentally unstable lone wolf. Bullying in the streets does not exist unless it has the support of the environment, the silent bystanders, and the not-so-silent advocates. Attacks on Jews, immigrants, extreme nationalism, neo-Nazism, hate speech, they all emerge from the foundation of xenophobia, ignorance, and misinformation, as well as from the choices we make with regards to language. And they are all a threat to democracies and to the sensitive balance of societies. So how does education play a role? The answer is complex, but here are some key elements that need to be addressed. I'll start with the question of where is education? Society used to have clear boundaries for the dissemination of information. This has changed. Alongside the boundaries of accessing information, the traditional boundaries of education have also been shattered. Today, each and every one of us is now a creator of knowledge, not just a receiver, something that wasn't true a decade or two ago. In fact, every person is at the same time a receiver, a distorter, a creator, and a delivery mechanism of information. We manufacture opinions and distribute them to the masses without any accountability whatsoever. This has enormous effects. Because there are no boundaries to information, there are also no boundaries to two key elements in education. The question of who is in possession of the facts, the truth, who holds the key to collective memory, who is fit to determine right from wrong, true from false, and the parallel question, who is my teacher? Is it the formal teacher in the formal system or the informal thousands of influencers over the internet? A few years ago, seemingly out of nowhere, my son told me that he knew about Auschwitz. How do you know Auschwitz? I asked him, since he was very young, had never visited the place, and I had never talked to him about it at home. Oh, Dad, he said, from X-Men. Magneto is a survivor of Auschwitz. Didn't you know that? Magneto, the villain from the X-Men movies, has a concentration camp number tattooed on his arm. Now, my son understood that it was only a fantasy movie, but still, everything was a bit of a mix in his mind. Perhaps the real teachers are Hollywood movies. And what about computer games? If you're not a gamer, I suggest you do some research because our kids are. You will see for yourselves how our kids are exposed to games such as Call of Duty World War II or Wolfenstein The New Order and others. Kids today play World War II mixed with the horrific events of the Holocaust. The games are very sophisticated, they're very, very violent. They try and succeed in mimicking historical events, but in a distorted way. In some, you can even choose size if you want to be this or that. Are these not powerful educational tools? The problem becomes more complicated when we realize that much of the data on the web is fake, not grounded, biased, a mix of opinions and facts and agendas. Moreover, the all-encompassing social media companies influence the information we're exposed to, and they do their best to curate the stream of information delivered to us. In other words, if they think I hate Israel or I hate Jews, my search queries will garner responses that the algorithms have decided reinforce my opinions and satisfy my personal curiosity. Fake data and misinformation, ladies and gentlemen, and the lack of boundaries to accessing it is perhaps the #1 challenge in our world today, and it's definitely one of the biggest challenges of education. Because it doesn't matter what you have learned from your teacher, but rather the information you discovered on your own or that your friends shared with you, or the things you heard from your parents who got their information from somewhere, but where? All around us. And young people do not have the tools and knowledge to differentiate between right and wrong, true or false. This is the question of where is education? Some of the misleading information is based on ignorance. Some of it is based on agendas. What is the proportion between the two? I don't know. But let me share 2 quick examples. When you Google something, the search engine automatically suggests how to end your search inquiry. You all know that. Only yesterday, when I typed the words Hitler was, Google offered me ways to autocomplete the search. The list included the following. Hitler was a sensitive man. Hitler was an artist. Hitler was a British agent. Hitler was a good painter. Hitler was a Zionist. Hitler was Australian. Hitler was asleep on D-Day, and perhaps Hitler was even a Jew. True story, by the way. While I'm talking, you can try and Google Hitler was and see what happens. Probably the search or the automated search inquiries will be personal to each one of you. The search predictions that Google offered are based on popularity, on what Google's algorithms think I will want to read, what Google's code written by human beings think will satisfy my curiosity and make my life easier. So here's another story. A few years ago, the International School for Holocaust Studies at Yad Vashem was approached by a group of people interested in producing a feature film on the Holocaust for younger ages. So when I traveled to New York, I met with a Hollywood film producer to discuss the idea. The producer said he knew nothing about the Holocaust and asked for a brief summary in order to decide whether, in his words, we have a story. I found myself, to my shock, giving an elevator pitch about the Holocaust, how it was done by people, to people, by the Nazi regime and their allies to the Jewish people, etc. After 10 minutes, the producer said, "Listen, I judge your words by imagining how the story looks on screen. And I must tell you, you've got a story. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. But since I visualize your story, I have one question to ask. Can we leave the Jews out of the story? Because I don't think it will look good on screen." Ladies and gentlemen, was this ignorance or some bizarre agenda? I really don't know. But you surely can see the results of an environment and the origins of fake data. This film producer wouldn't have dared to ask this question unless he didn't understand that there was a problem with it, unless he didn't feel supported or he felt supported by his environment. If Yad Vashem had partnered with him, the producer would have been part of the distribution mechanism of misleading information. So going back to the question, can education play a role in changing people's anti-Semitic views, in altering the language of hate? The answer is absolutely yes, but let me offer a few considerations. 1, education is not only the formal education systems, it's related to all sources of information and learning processes. We must act in the arena of schools, but more so in the arena of the informal learning online environments. 2, education is about language. The language we use represents not only thoughts and perceptions, but also the way we process information, our personal and collective memory, a certain music of how we are related to or we relate to other people. In order to change the music of language, we must act in a multilateral approach on all fronts, including the political field as well as the public sphere, and there are no quick fixes with this area. 3, formal education must address this topic seriously. If we take the subject matter of the Holocaust, for example, one of the problems is that the Holocaust is often presented as a symbol, only as a slogan, but it is not taught deep enough. The Holocaust shouldn't be taught only as a symbol. One must dive into the horrific times of last century's anti-Semitism. Learn about how a democratic state became a dictatorship. Learn about the fate of the Jewish people, but more so, learn about the people who were Jews, their lives, their cultures. See them as ordinary human beings, and not, as Karen said, with tails and big teeth. The Jews were not born in Auschwitz. They had names and faces and dreams. As Holocaust survivor Abel Herzberg reminded us, there were not 6 million Jews murdered, but rather one murder 6 million times, a different Jew murdered each time. When you learn about other people as real people, you have the chance to create empathy, to create an emotional connection, and this is crucial if one wants to change views. 4, you need time and you need materials. I would like to refer all of you to education recommendations of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance that were launched at the recent IHRA plenary meetings, and these are a good starting point for every country. Also, I offer Yad Vashem's materials on the subject of the Holocaust and on anti-Semitism. For example, we produced an academic level massive open online course accessible to everyone. It's free, that explains the phenomenon of anti-Semitism from its roots until today. And I invite all of you to come to seminars at Yad Vashem. Most of you do that, but as the ones that do not, please come. I believe it's a life-changing experience. I invite you not only to use the materials, but also to make sure that the clerks, the officials, the teachers, the lawmakers in your countries do the same. They all should learn and raise their awareness and knowledge. And last but not least, Abba Kovner, a Holocaust survivor, said in a speech before the Israeli parliament in 1981, Holocaust education is first and foremost an act of soul-searching within ourselves and with the world, an ongoing accounting. In this type of soul-searching, the answers do not precede the questions. Therefore, it requires not only knowledge and cognitive perception, not only historic investigation, specific or general, not only a didactic plan, more than anything, it requires courage. Combating bigotry starts with soul-searching, self-accounting, knowledge, historic investigation, and education, but it also takes courage. We must not become bystanders in the face of hate speech against Jews and against any other group for that matter. The people here in this room must be courageous in order to deal with the wrongdoings of spreading hate, bigotry, and anti-Semitism. We must provide ground rules about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable online, in our politics, in the way we communicate our messages. And we must not assume that anti-Semitism, bigotry, and hate are only shades on the outskirts of society, minor bumps that can be dismissed and ignored. These shades brought the world into total darkness 80 years ago, darkness that chaos that perhaps could have been prevented if only enough people had taken a stand to stop it. Thank you.
Eyal, thank you for your very interesting remarks, and especially about the importance of media and social media in the fight against anti-Semitism and how we should deal with it. And I fully agree that our effort should be to spread the Holocaust education and its connection with the Jewish identity. Now, let me give the floor to Mr. Jonathan Langer.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very honored to be part of this very important symposium and to share my personal story with all of you. I grew up in Berlin, Germany, and I had a normal childhood. My parents were not neo-Nazis. I was not very close to them when I was a teenager, so they were not aware of the path I took when I was younger, until I changed my path as an adult. When I was very young, I became a karate champion. I was in a karate group with guys who were 10 years older than me. They were tough, competitive, and very cool. I felt lucky to be in their group, to identify with them. We would train together, hang out together, and I felt a sense of belonging. I felt protected within this group, and one day, someone brought music he liked. And at first, I didn't even pay attention to the lyrics, and that it was about hate. I was just happy to be part of this group. We kept on listening to the music, met from time to time,